Hello everyone, I'm Adriane Ritter.
And I'm Shelley McNeely.
And we are here for the Valley of the Mist Quilt Guild's Block of the Month, and we're doing a special short video just on half square triangles. So this year we're doing a number of blocks that use half square triangles of different sizes. And so we don't want to every month have to go in detail about half square triangles. So that's why we're making this video for you to refer to. So the first thing about half square triangles is when you're making a half square triangle, you're going to be instructed to cut fabric. And there is a formula for calculating that size, but I'm not going to get into that. You can look at it. It's a kind of just a math equation you do. And when you do that equation, you will end up with a lot of times with a 3 and 7/8 or 3 and 15/16 size. Yeah. We generally round up just to make it easy. So like for this size right here that I have, these are 4-inch squares, and they will make a 3.5 inch, out of 2 of these squares you'll get 2 3.5 inch half square triangles. They actually are a little oversized, and you have to trim them down. Now, if you are very frugal with fabric and you're making a quilt with a lot of half square triangles, we don't normally recommend, that you have to buy specialty things, but I will say that triangle papers are kind of make it very easy. You can decide, say you need 20 triangles, you would roll out the paper and it would tell you how many it's making for a certain length. And then it would tell you the width to cut the 2 pieces of fabric, and you lay the paper on it and it tells you how to sew kind of a zigzag pattern all over it in one continuous line, and then at the end it tells you what to trim, what to cut, and you'll end up with half square triangles that are the right size. For our purposes this year, we're doing kind of onesie twosies for the most part of half square triangles, so it's not maybe the most efficient. The other specialty thing that you can use, which I'll talk about a little bit more later, there is a company that makes a ruler, and it's called a block lock ruler, and it's made for trimming half square triangles. And the reason why it's kind of nice is that if you press, generally when you're doing half square triangles, you're going to press to the darker fabric. In our blocks this month, we aren't always pressing. So this isn't necessarily a help, but it has this channel that you can put the pressed edge into, and you lock it on, and then you can just easily turn it and do the trimming. So that's what those are for, but they're not required. Okay, so in making the half square triangles, Shelley and I do it more simply for just a few, and we have 2 different methods. Now, I'll let Shelley talk for a minute. Okay, so Shelley, explain yours.
Okay, so my half square triangles, I like to sew on the line I draw. So out of our squares, we make 2 half square triangles. There's a special ruler you can use where you put the center line.
If you've seen this ruler and wondered what the heck is this for,
and then you draw on either side. But you don't have to use a special ruler. You can just use a regular ruler that has a 1/4 inch mark, and I just put the 1/4 inch.
And it could be any ruler, anything that shows 1/4 inches.
And as long as it
is long enough. Yeah. It has to be long enough to go from point to point on the diagonal.
I just put the 1/4 inch mark on the diagonal, and then I draw on the edge.
And she draws on either side?
Yes, on either side. You just move the ruler over and draw on the other side, and then you sew those lines. Okay. I usually use a pencil, but you can use, you're sewing on the line. So
yeah, on yours I think you might want to be a little more careful.
I use a pencil on this. I don't do it dark.
Yeah, just dark enough to see. Kind of like, you probably can't even see it, but this one has a very light pencil mark on it.
And actually this is water soluble stuff.
So she can just get rid of it. Okay, so my method, I only want to draw one line, and so I draw one line along the diagonals. And there's actually even another tool that is supposed to do it, and I just struggle with that. So please, if you know a good way to do half square triangles, you're happy to do however you go it.
Yeah.
But I draw one line, and so I have been careful and made sure I actually put my fabrics right sides together, because I have probably taken out in my sewing lifetime 50 that I've done where I'm just going along and I forget that they weren't right sides up or whatever, and just double check that.
Yes, particularly your whites.
Yeah. So I sew a line down the middle, and then I just know my machine, and this is really good for other blocks. Mm-hmm. And this foot, and I have several feet where I know that if I have the needle in a center needle position, it's a 1/4 inch to this solid edge away, from the center. And I would look at your feet on your machine. You probably have similar things, because the sewing machine manufacturers are smart, and they're trying to help us, and they do things that make it easy for us to find this 1/4 inch. And
it's a common size we use all the time. So,
yeah. And even though if you're coming from garment sewing, well, why not 5/8? They just aren't. They're doing the 1/4 inch. So I mark the center line, and then I sew on either side of the center line. And it's probably hard to see, but this is the back side. You can see there's a little bit of white seam right there. So then, after you've sewn that, you're going to take, and I'm not going to do that right now, but I would take, on my case, Shelley would be putting a ruler diagonally.
Just from
point to point.
Here.
And I cut on that line. Now, I will caution you, if you are a little loosey-goosey with how accurate you are on sewing that, look to see that you have a seam on, a little bit of ways from that line.
Yeah, that's true.
Because sometimes you twitch or something, I don't know, and your seam gets really little. These ones you have a little bit of extra, in case it gets big. But, make sure you've got the seam line is pretty even between that
your
center.
Your space should be about 1/2 inch.
Yeah, you should have about 1/2 inch. If it's small, if it's a little smaller in places, that's fine. Just try to stay in the middle between the two seams that you've sewn.
Yes.
And you're going to cut that apart. And when you do that, you're going to end up with a piece. I'm going to take this, Shelley's, like this. Now, in this case, because the block she's making, she wants the seams pressed open. Like I said, sometimes you're going to press them to the dark or to the light. It just depends on how they're going to kind of nest with each other. Mm-hmm. And this is not trimmed.
Right.
So she's going to take a ruler now. Oh yeah, turn it how you want it.
Of course, I'm doing this upside down, which is totally different, but whatever. Okay, let's see if I can see this where.
So the first trim you do, she's going to be careful and make sure that this center line on the diagonal, the 45-degree line, is on that center line, and that she's got edge under here. Now, if you've got it, like hers probably measures about 3 3/4, and we need 3 1/2.
I think I can't tell. I look at this bottom corner where the two intersect, lay it on the corner, and then I trim.
And so Shelley likes to only trim a little bit if she has to on one edge, and then trim good on the other. So she might put it all the way up here and just trim off these points on one edge.
Yes.
Now, I hate picking up those points. So I trim a whole line on each edge, just to make it easy to pick up the scraps. I got it. Each his own. But make sure you've got enough there extra. And if you've done the calculation for the half square triangle and you're using a smaller, more accurate piece, you may not have more than those little points to trim off.
But the most important part, I think, is you have to have this diagonal on the diagonal, or they're going to be wonky.
Yeah, they're going to, and if you want wonky, that's okay. But so in this case, you would trim off the points or a little bit on one side, turn it around, and do the second trimming to the size that you need.
Right.
So that's pretty much half square triangles.
Yeah.